welcome to Pop Culture Problems, which will soon spin off into its very own spin-off show, Pop Culture Solutions.
Wow.
I'm John Oderman. This is your host, your co-host, Josh Nichols.
No, you said it right. I'm the host. You're just baggage.
That's why I'm leaving.
Oh,
That's
really?
my solution.
Well, see, this pop culture solution thing comes as a surprise for me because now I have twice as much to edit. Oh, hooray! Huzzah! Hooray!
You know what? Maybe we should just stick with just the one show.
Well, yeah, I think why do multiple things with mediocrity when we can do one thing super well? That's my philosophy.
Yeah. Well, that's a philosophy that I think some movie studios should embrace.
So
fully.
I'm not verse. Okay, I'm going to say this. I used to be a real big movie guy. Mm-hmm. And as you get old and you start, your just body starts to sag and gray hairs spring out of every hole that you ever had, you start to lose some of the things you did as a kid. And I used to love video games. I don't play as many anymore and stuff like that. And I think it's called growing up. Is that?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and so I'm
adulting. Slowly getting there.
Yeah, I've been adulting a little bit more. And so I've been out of a lot of the movie specifics. I still have my certain passions that I know a lot about. And I know you're passionate about comic books and also, comic book movies and stuff. And you kept up on that. So you know more about the Marvel and the DC universes and those types of things than I do. So I'm looking to be educated.
Well, and that's really, I think that's kind of where this whole shared universe thing started. And that's what we're planning on talking about today is just, is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Should studios do it? Should studios not do it? And I think it's met with mixed results. And it really kind of started when Marvel kind of had this idea of, and the funny thing is Marvel had the rights to all like their not so popular superheroes because they had little known fact for people that maybe didn't pay attention back then. Back in 1997, Marvel filed for bankruptcy. Oh, and as a part of that, they sold off the rights to some of their more popular characters at the time, like the X-Men, Spider-Man. So these different movie studios had the rights to these characters. And they still retain the rights to these characters. So like the X-Men, Fantastic Four are with 20th Century Fox. Spider-Man is with Sony. And so like Captain America, Thor, Iron Man did not burn up like the sales charts when it came to comic books back then. And it wasn't until like they got big in the movies that Marvel really started to focus on them in the comic books. But so the first movie that Marvel Studios made, and wasn't even Marvel Studios back then, was Iron Man. And they had like this throwaway after credit scene with Nick Fury talking about the Avengers Initiative that had Iron Man bombed, we would never have seen these other movies. Okay. And it was because, but Iron Man turned out to be this huge success, and Iron Man was like kind of a big risk. I mean, you had Robert Downey Jr. coming basically from drug treatment in jail, and like he was a guy that was big in the 80s and then disappeared in the 90s, and it was kind of a big risk.
I hear that he nailed his audition. I was reading recently about auditions that were so well done. One of them, since you're talking about X-Men, Logan, which I recently saw. Uh-huh. I love the girl in it.
She was
phenomenal, and I heard that she came in and just blew them away. She was ad-libbing in her audition, going off script and already, and just was phenomenal. And the other one I heard was Robert Downey Jr., because he had done some other movies between Iron Man and his release, but it was not. This was his comeback.
Well, and Iron Man was like Tom Cruise was in like they had a lot of like big names actors that were kind of in the mix for the role, and when they cast Robert Downey Jr., I was like, wow, geez, okay, that's a big risk, but I mean, it paid off. He did an awesome job. He's still doing an awesome job as Tony Stark and Iron Man today, and but without that first movie, and I think that the reason it worked was because they said, you know what, we're going to tell the best Iron Man story we possibly can, and from there, if this works out, maybe we can build a universe. Because then after Iron Man, they had Captain America, the First Avenger, Thor, and then you had the Avengers movie, and they made it like kind of organically. Whereas there's these new ones that you see popping up where it's almost like they're bludgeoning you over the head with, hey, look, we're setting up a shared universe. And an example of that would be like the DC movies that, Man of Steel. I actually really like Man of Steel, but they interweave like all these little hints and stuff, and they just kind of hammer you over the head like, hey, look, we're setting this up.
Oh, people are gonna meet up.
Yeah. And Marvel's kind of done that too now, but I think Marvel kind of gets a pass because they did it right the first couple times. But you see, like Universal has their MonsterVerse, the Dark Universe that they're setting up with. It was a launch with the new Mummy movie this last spring. They're going to do like Bride of Frankenstein and a bunch of other of their classic movie monsters. Okay. They're supposed to be all in the same universe. And I think a movie that you didn't necessarily like recently that I liked, Kong Skull Island, is also similar to this.
Well, I mean, Kong Skull Island. I'm gonna say something about this that I don't like you because you disappoint me. I start to enjoy your company. I start to enjoy your presence, and then what you do is you throw out something like Skull Island, and I'm like, what? Here's the reason I didn't like Skull Island, and again, I don't have a lot of knowledge, but I liked the Peter Jackson King Kong. I enjoyed it. It was a longer movie, had some criticism because of that, had great special effects. Andy Serkis,
I like that one too, yeah.
Doing his work with Kong. I think one of the most jarring things for me, I'll start from the beginning. First 5 minutes of Kong, I didn't like the style. It was very yellow and orange. It had a very warm tone. It was like 300, except with it was lighter.
Yeah.
And it kind of, again, it fit that.
I could do an entire show on how terrible Zack Snyder and filters are in movies.
Okay, so the filters was I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
And then for me, the first thing that was like was Kong being bipedal Kong, walking upright, more humanoid. And I know that some of the originals he was more like that, but Peter Jackson did such a good job
making
kind
him
of grounding
an ape.
and making him an ape
gorilla,
and grounding that, and I fell in love with that. So I didn't so much care for that aspect of it, and then it went off the rails for me with the kind of different characters, these skull monsters and stuff. It didn't seem grounded to me. It wasn't the original Kong story. So you were already taking what people knew about it, and then you made him bipedal, and then you did the filters, and then it just didn't do it for me. And I really liked John C. Reilly's character. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily when John C. Reilly is the best part of a movie, and he's not with Will Ferrell. You know what I mean? Like when it's not one of those duo movies.
Yeah.
That's not a great statement. He's a great actor, but usually he's the throwaway character. He's a
great character actor.
And he did great in that movie, I thought. But I like the backstory of his character, but the movie just didn't do it for me. And I'm scared because I actually saw the new Godzilla in theater. First movie I saw in D-Box. I liked it.
Yeah, it was a good movie. I like that one too.
I am scared because I don't want this mashup movie with Kong and Godzilla. I think it's going to
don't want Godzilla. That. See, but what if it's good? What if it's good? Does that change your opinion of Kong Skull Island?
No, it's not going to make Kong Skull Island better, but it might make my view of Godzilla worse because it's adding in this random element.
But Josh, like you're just kind of presupposing it's going to suck.
I'm not presupposing it's going to suck. I'm just saying, okay, let's do this. Let's go back to one of the first shared universes that I grew up with. Freddy versus Jason.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I loved Freddy versus Jason. I loved it. Absolutely loved everything about it. And
not originally in the same universe, but after the fact that this goes back to I think that make good movies on the front end and then bring them together.
Well, I liked Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, first of all, I like the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I love Freddy Krueger. Nightmare on Elm Street 1 was okay. 2 was terrible. After that, it was great. But I love Freddy Krueger. He was my guy. That was my jam. That's why I wanted to win.
Yep.
I always hated Friday the 13th. They were formulaic. Oh, there's a naked couple. They're going to have sex. Oh, no, they're killed. He is going to walk slowly. He's going to be creepy in the background. Wait, he's going to come alive the next movie. Hey, I've got it. It was his mom. No, it was him in an Elephant Man mask. No, he's in Manhattan. He's in space. Like, they just kept one-upping each other, but it was half-naked people getting killed. That was it. There was no... And he was a lame character. He wasn't funny. He really wasn't that badass. He was just
Freddy did have that good humor element
exactly.
to him. Yeah.
In Freddy vs. Jason, they took a lame character, Jason, who was, in my opinion, never very good, and they made him kick ass. In Freddy vs. Jason, they got this 6'5" actor to play him. They had his oversized machete. I think the first scene he was in, he ran like a zombie, a fast zombie, like a baby gazelle. Yeah. And he was like running and just beheaded the guy. He was like, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, Freddy, you better run, girl. You better run. Because like they made him badass. Yeah. And what I liked about that is they took something that wasn't good and they made it better. If they can do that with Kong, if they can take away the things I didn't like about Kong, great.
See, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, I have faith.
Who's directing it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they have. I don't know if they have.
Are they going to have the weird
yet.
filters and artistic style?
See, I think we need to just decide that filters are not a good idea when it comes to movies.
It's not always bad, but it has to be a certain type of movie. And when you're taking a movie like Godzilla, was I have a hard time saying it's grounded, but they made it believable.
Another set of movies that they turned into a shared universe that I absolutely love is the Aliens versus Predator.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That movie, like Alien versus Predator, the way it was set up, like where that the Predators, like basically bred the aliens or had a queen like frozen so that they could have like it's like a coming of age challenge for these predators and stuff like that. That was so sweet.
Oh, yeah. I liked Freddy vs. Jason better because I loved Freddy so much.
Yeah.
I loved Aliens, never really saw Predator. So Predator was kind of like the Jason territory. Aliens were more like the Freddy. But I loved it, too. I mean, they did such a good job setting it up. And then they started getting greedy. Because I remember they wanted, at one time, to do a Freddy versus Jason versus Ash from The Evil Dead.
Yes, yeah.
Come on. I love Ash.
I don't think Ash can run with those two.
Well, yeah, but it also makes it way too silly.
Yeah.
Like with Freddy versus Jason, they give a backstory like Freddy is going into Jason's dreams. They pulled it together. The Predators having bred the they made it work. And I think now they almost put them in the movie together without rationale or reason.
See, and that's a good point because like Ash, his thing is like zombies, and Jason is like in that kind of realm, but I don't know if there's a lot of crossover there with with their setups because Predators and Aliens that makes sense.
You also have to do it, again, with a little grace and style. I don't want them to just meet up. I don't want it to be like, Godzilla is terrorizing the city, and all of a sudden, Kong just happens to be on a boat going to the city. Like, have more of a reason that they're together. And I think that's one of the things they just pop them together. They're like, we're just going to pop all these people in the movie. It's like an all-star cast movie. Like, you look at something... Mars Attacks was not my favorite movie. I might be remembering it wrong. When I was a kid, I remember not loving it. And I remember thinking, why are there 500 A-list celebrities in this movie?
Yes, yeah.
Like, they just threw them together so that they could sell tickets. And I thought to myself, well, why? And that's what they're doing here. They're taking A-list characters.
Yeah, you're right.
And they're just throwing them together.
Yeah, there's not a lot of originality in this, but I don't know. I'm kind of excited for Godzilla versus Kong or whatever they're going to call it, and I think it could be good. I guess I'm kind of excited about it. Maybe that's the fanboy in me coming out, just like that love for pop culture and the love for those things that have come before, and just see how you can kind of maybe get a new twist on them.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay,
because I don't think we can have an entire episode on this. So I know it's going off the rails a little.
Okay.
What did you think about the 90s Godzilla with Matthew Broderick?
I'm neutral on it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't think it was awesome.
See, I don't remember.
I wasn't super huge on like the baby Godzillas in Madison Square Garden.
Okay. I remember liking the movie, and again, I don't know if I remember it being great. But what I loved was the first 15 minutes of them setting up that it was this radioactive deformation of these,
Yep.
like the Galapagos, and I'm like, they grounded it. They made it something that
Like
could
you
happen.
could science your way into it.
Yeah, and I like that. And people griped about, well, it looks like a T-Rex, and it's not what we remember Godzilla to be. But it was a reimagination of it. The new Godzilla with the more traditional-looking Godzilla was fine, too. But those are two movies I think stand alone, and they're not terrible. I just didn't get behind Kong.
Now, when it comes to shared universes, because Wings and Cheers, did you know that they existed in the same universe?
Yeah, wasn't there was there a guest star?
Cliff and Norm came to Nantucket.
Okay.
They flew in, and there was actually an episode where they were and the thing is the showrunners for Wings and Cheers were the same people. And, you have Frasier in the same universe too, but that's something that hasn't happened a lot in TV. All in the Family had its different spin-offs and stuff, but you didn't have a lot of shows that were running congruently with each other side by side that were shared universe shows. Law and Order does it, not as much crossover as you have in movies per se, but I mean, is there anything that you can think of from your fandom that you would have loved to have seen them cross over and be in a shared universe?
Ooh, I'm trying to think of some of my favorite TV shows and how those would have interacted with one another.
I would have loved, and I would still love to see this today, a ultra serious this is really weird. But an ultra serious take on a war between the Smurfs and the Snorks.
Wow, that's a very the Snorks. Get out of here, Snorks. There was a ripoff at the Smurfs.
That's what I mean. It's I don't know. I'm pretty sure the Smurfs came first, but the Snorks were an underwater ripoff of the Smurfs.
Yeah, and maybe they were the same universe, or maybe they kind of,
I mean, I think it's easier to do in cartoons, and they did that all the time, where they had these random crossover episodes of cartoons and stuff like that.
Oh well,
but
Scooby-Doo with all the guest stars.
Yes.
Oh, it's Casey Kasem helping to solve the murder. What?
How Casey Kasem after the age of 45? Do you think he ever had to actually would have had to have worked with all the residuals he was getting from everything that he did?
Probably not. I mean, he really only worked one day a year, the New Year, Casey Kasem's New Year's Eve bash.
Yes,
or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He's oh man, I'm gonna call in sick this year. Oh boy, I didn't want to do that. I think for me, some shows are so iconic that I think it would be hard for them to grace. I think it would almost be cheesy for them to come together. For instance,
I'm going to take two of your favorite shows, Will and Grace and Golden Girls. Wouldn't you like to see them interact?
But it's such a weird. I love Dexter and I love Quantum Leap, but I think that would be a weird pairing. You know what I mean? It wouldn't necessarily fit together. But I mean, I'm trying to think of shows that would just merge and meld well, but I really can't. Most of the shows that I think would be maybe from the 80s, the Golden Girls meet the Jeffersons, or you know what I mean? George Jefferson comes to, sits on the lanai with the girls. That would be interesting, but I don't know that it's necessary. I think those things have to feel natural.
Yeah.
I think that you have to feel like it's not absurd, and it's not, again, forcing it down your throat and beating it together. Okay, well, Sam from Quantum Leap is going to leap into the body of Dexter Morgan, the murderer, and it'll be a weird conundrum because he wants to save the victim. What? No. That's not going to fit. It's going to be forced. And there's nothing supernatural or scientific in Dexter. And so, I think that's sometimes where you get things pushed together where they make these things happen. And maybe that's the same with Godzilla and Kong.
See,
you have this island that, for whatever reason,
and they kind of got into Hollow Earth theory in that movie. Correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they talk about Hollow Earth? I think they did.
I don't.
Like where there's these different places that are connected through like underneath the crust of the earth and.
But again, this island or underground or wherever bred this giant ape and also dinosaurs with skulls for heads and all this random stuff. And then wasn't it partly related to like nuclear reactors and
yeah. It was a product of its time, yeah.
But it just feels like, how do those two come together? Isn't it unbelievable that one of those creatures exists?
Isn't that the exciting part, though, Josh?
No.
Finding out how they come together.
The fact that one of those creatures exists is too amazing to me. And to have both of them exist and then meet up.
You know, I would actually like to get back, like, I'd like to see a King Kong movie where, like, we see the Kong family. Because that's been alluded to in a couple movies now where, like, he's the last of his kind. And, like, his parents were, like, the kings and stuff, and or king and queen or whatever, and they ruled over, like, this civilization, not civilization, but, like, this group of giant apes. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd like to see, like, a King Kong prequel, see what his daily life was like.
Yeah. I mean, him growing up as a baby.
Yeah.
Him, you know, kind of...
I'd watch that, like a Gorillas in the Mist, but King Kong in the Mist.
That's one thing I'll give Kong, about Kong the character. I was a little judgmental and prematurely about Kong because in the first 15 minutes, there was full-blown action. And I didn't mind the action sequence, but I felt they didn't give a lot of build-up to. Because Kong should be
that was something I like, though.
Well,
because that's like, to me, that's like so formulaic. Like where they've done so many of these monster movies where like they have the monster in silhouette or you don't see the monster. I liked the fact that he just showed up right away and he starts wrecking shop.
Well, but I felt like there wasn't a lot of payoff because that was the payoff. That scene was one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene.
And they didn't. If they show him at the beginning, great. Then you better have a scene that's twice as good at the end, and that's fine. But when he first was doing that, I was like, this isn't Kong. Kong was more compassionate. He had more, like, seeing the other movies where he had more feeling. And as the movie went along, I saw that kind of wall and shield break down for him a little bit, where he had a little more compassion. And this is a prequel of sorts. It's before he's off this island. And so I kind of felt like, okay, he's getting there, and it's slowly, and it's gradual. Yeah. And I was okay with that, but at first I was like, "This was great."
And he is so much bigger in this movie because they had to make him bigger. They had to increase his scale because Godzilla would have dwarfed him.
But see, that's the thing. And I was reading an article because I wanted to see how badly other people's hated it, and they were saying that he is still minute compared to Godzilla.
Really?
Yeah, I was reading that that's a problem of how they're going to figure that out for the next movie because the scale apparently is still small. Yeah, I was just reading an article. I might be wrong.
Well, maybe, and I could be wrong on this too, but they might have said in the movie that he was just like an adolescent.
That's true, but boy,
like he wasn't fully grown or something. But anyway, back to this whole shared universe thing, though. Like I'm cautiously optimistic about the Kong Godzilla monsterverse. I mean, what would you call that? Because you have the dark universe with Universal, and that's kind of like the monsterverse. That's like the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, the Mummy, Dracula, Hunchback of Notre Dame,
aka Monster Squad.
Yes, yeah. So that's the Monster Squad verse.
The Monster Squad verse. That was a good classic movie.
That is a great movie. And that's a great mashup movie where you get them all together and that was fantastic.
And in a fun way where it worked.
Yes.
Like they put thought into it and it made sense.
Yeah. But I think studios are maybe like trying a little too hard to reproduce the Marvel Studios success. To me, one of Marvel Studios' best movies is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah.
I love that movie and it's like it's a standalone movie, but it also fits into the universe because you've got like Thanos and stuff. But it's such a good standalone movie. Like I'll watch that whenever I see it on.
But see, that's scary to me because I love Guardians, and I didn't see the second one yet, but I love Guardians 1 so much. Loved it.
Yeah.
and I don't want them to ruin it by bringing other people into it or bringing them over to the other movie. Let them have their own movie. Let me enjoy them for what it is.
See, well, and I think that is something that Marvel has done pretty well, where you've had these standalone movies, but now that they've interacted with each other, you're kind of like, well, why doesn't Iron Man call Thor or the Avengers in on this thing? Like, why doesn't he ask for help? Yeah, you know, when it's a standalone movie, that's kind of like a hard sell to people. But I think they've done a good job. It's worked. I think DC, like with their movie universe, really had like a misstep when they did Batman versus Superman, because they just tried to jam too much stuff in there. They had a great course correction with Wonder Woman. I'm cautiously optimistic Justice League will be good, but I'm not confident of that because I think it's going to be a little. Joss Whedon is doing the final edit now, so maybe it'll be better. But I just really feel like they've tried too hard to have a shared universe as opposed to like actually telling good stories. And that's what it really comes down to, is like telling good stories. Because Alien versus Predator, if they wouldn't have came up with that good story, we'd hate it. We'd say, why did you ruin these two sets of great characters?
True.
And that's probably maybe what we'd say if Kong versus Godzilla or whatever they're going to say. I mean, what do you think they're going to call that movie? King of the Monsters or Crapzilla?
Crapzilla. Well, and here, this
with
goes
crap with a K.
This goes back to my Guardians of the Galaxy thing. Let me love Godzilla. I didn't like Kong. People have different opinions. I loved Godzilla. People have different opinions. Don't put them together and make me be forced to choose whether to love or hate it because one is in it that I like and one is not. And again, Freddy versus Jason can happen. They could make Kong better. But isn't that disingenuous to the people who like Kong? If you change him so that I like him, isn't that not...
Didn't you already like Kong, though, before this movie?
I didn't like the Kong and Skull Island. Just like some people didn't like the Matthew Broderick Godzilla. And so, don't necessarily change it. If people love...
Well, let's not blame Godzilla for that. Let's blame Matthew Broderick.
Well, that's... Well,
or Sarah Jessica Parker.
I just wish he would have thrown out some show tunes during that. Speaking of which, though, Kong was 100 feet in Kong Skull Island.
Okay.
Godzilla in the 2014 movie was 350 feet. So he is
better be eating his Wheaties.
Third the size.
Better eat his Wheaties.
So I just, and again, I don't know if this data is outdated or not. I mean, maybe that was just original projections of his size, and now, scientists will do scale, schematics of the mountains and reconfigure. But that's still, that's a 250-foot difference is not going to be easy to just be like, meh, he grew.
Or he shrunk.
250 feet. Godzilla has osteoporosis. He shrunk. But it's degenerative bone disease. Oh no. It's going to be hard to do. So I hope... I feel like I'm being contradictory because I'm saying don't change Kong for those people, but I was happy when they changed Jason. And so I'm going to say like what we always say, live and let live. You do you. I don't have to go seeing Kong versus Godzilla. I don't have to go see
But what's your verdict on this whole shared universe thing? I mean, you think it's a good idea? Think it's a bad idea? Does it enrich some movies? Or are you just like, say, let's stay away from this?
I have not, for example, the Avengers, I have not seen. I've not seen any of the Avengers movies. I'm not huge into that universe of movies anyway. Liked Iron Man 1, didn't care for Iron Man 2, so I didn't see Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that far. I've seen some of the Spider-Mans. I've enjoyed some of them. I hated others. So I'm not... I just wish I could like what I like and don't necessarily force it down. All the shared universe movies I've seen, with the exception of Freddy vs. Jason and Aliens vs. Predator, those coming together movies, I've not really... they haven't excited me. I've been like, ugh. Because there's going to be one thing in there that you don't like. When you go to see an X-Men movie, right? I mean, those characters are all in the same universe, and they should be.
Yep.
But aren't there some characters that you like less?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why I'm cautiously optimistic about Justice League, is because for some reason DC thought a couple years ago that Martian Manhunter, who for 60 years was a founding member of the Justice League, wasn't worth being a founding member of the Justice League anymore. And so now he's been replaced by Cyborg, who will be in Justice League. And like that pisses me off to like such an obscene degree that I think Justice League is going to suck because of it.
Well, okay.
Because it doesn't have this character that's one of my favorites.
Character. And with X-Men, again, if you don't like one of the X-Men and they have more screen time than somebody you really like, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Like, you're upset by it. And so that's why I think you're diluting the pool. You're taking things that make a good Jason movie or make a good Freddy movie. Like when we started this episode, we were talking about pop culture solutions and how if we make a second podcast, why do two things with mediocrity? Let's do one thing really well. And I think you're diluting the pool by having all these characters. It is, let's have A-list characters all be in the movie at the same time because that'll sell the movie because we lack plot and we lacked any sort of goodness. You know, and that's where I think we're going with it, is we're diluting the pool. I hope that those movies end up being well, and I hope we never make pop culture solutions because we're just too damn good the way we are. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to Pop Culture Problems. We'll see you next time.